And
oh yeah, thank you.
thank you for the positive comment. And so here, Mariana discovered her passion for teaching at the age of 8. Delivering lessons to her younger sister at their kitchen table in Mexico. That's really interesting to know, by the way. And since then, she has continuously expanded her teaching experience, focusing on languages at the higher education level. Currently based at the Language Center of the Berlin School of Economics and Law, Mariana is dedicated to enhancing language assessment practices through innovative education tools. And with a background in learning, media, and technology, and a strong interest in the intersection of educational technology and AI, she is currently involved in a pilot project that integrates AI into the grading process of business English writing exams. Our second presenter, Wiktoria, has over 10 years of experience in English language teaching and currently teaches and coordinates English language courses at the Berlin School of Economics and Law. She's also pursuing her PhD in linguistics and English language at Lancaster University, researching the effectiveness of accommodations in language testing for students with ADHD. In 2024, she received a Duolingo English Test Doctoral Award recognizing this work. Wiktoria was also a recipient of a 2024 Jamie Dunley IOTA Emerging Researcher Travel Grant from British Council. The floor is yours.
Hi. Well, thank you. Let me share my screen and we can get started. Okay. So I just need some verbal confirmation that you can see everything. Looks good?
Yes. Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay. Beautiful. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Well, let's get started. So thank you everyone for joining us. I don't know where you are, but the sun is shining in Berlin, and that is a very special, it means it's a special day. And so we're going to get started talking about writing assessment and artificial intelligence. And I would like us to do a little bit of daydreaming because spring is coming. And with that optimism, I would like you to just think if you could design a tool that did everything in terms of grading writing for you, what would it do? I have a list here. Perhaps it could highlight level appropriate vocabulary that was used, maybe highlight the spelling, the grammar errors, identify stronger weak sentences. Maybe it adds the points for you. Perhaps you can completely customize it to your task and your grading rubric. And maybe you really wanted to export to an Excel. Well, this may or may not have been the list that I gave a software developer / machine learning scientist who also happens to be my husband when he asked me what I wanted for Christmas a few years ago. And I told him that I wanted a tool, like that was all, a tool that did it all. And it seemed very simple for me. And I really wanted for this tool to be ready before the exam season rolled around a month later. And well, this software developer delivered. And so in this presentation, we're going to show you how this tool came to be, discuss. We're going to show you an example of how we use the tool, talk about the output efficiency, show you, discuss the challenges and implications, and just really give you a look as to what is possible when it comes to using artificial intelligence, in this case, ChatGPT. So the university we work for, students are required to take an externally accredited certification exam at the end of their B2 and C1 level courses called the UNIcert Business English. And when they pass this exam, they get a certificate that details their skills. And what is really interesting about this exam is that unlike other standardized tests where an agency typically develops the exams and then administers them, the UNIcert is done completely in-house. So Wiktoria and I design the test, we administer them, and of course, we're mostly responsible for grading them. The exams used to be paper-based, so we even had to do all the printing. As of this current semester, the winter 24-25 semester, we switched to e-assessment, so now we are responsible for transforming these exams into Moodle tests. We only offer 2 levels, so the UNIcert 2 and UNIcert 3, to about 100 students per semester. And something worth mentioning is that our exam is special because all of the skills are connected by an overarching topic. So this means that one semester, the topic might be greenwashing. The next, it'll be the use of AI at work. And when we focus on the writing component of the exam, students will either write an email based on a meeting they participated in with roles, or they will write a report using different sources. And for these writing tasks, they are allowed to use dictionaries, but they're not allowed to use spell checks, generative AI, or any other tool. So it is within this context that the GPT Grader was born, in an effort to support the immense workload that is associated with providing our students with this certificate. One of the main concerns that we had, of course, as the grader was being developed was how we were going to keep data safe. And so that's why we decided to develop a tool that uses custom GPT prompts in automated manners, as opposed to just using the GPT web interface. And that would mean copying and pasting text that our students produce. So what we do to further protect their data is to remove all identifying information from the text that we feed. And because we use an API that allows our grader to use ChatGPT essentially, and because we pay for this API, then OpenAI, the company that does ChatGPT, does not use our text, so the students' text, as part of their training data. Now, the example that we have for you today is from an exam the students took a few semesters ago around the topic of diversity at work. They participated in a meeting and they had to write an email where they summarized the issue and the decision that was made. And like I said, for the meetings and for the writing, students get a role. Now, the very first thing that one does when we want to use the grader is set up the task. So this is what the grader looks like. And we first need to add class information, so the level and what we expect from them, then the task description. And we also give context. This is all the information that students also get. And we, of course, have to upload the grading rubric, so the categories, point, ranges, etc. Once the task is already set up, then we can actually use the grader. And we simply upload a TXT file that has the student text, and just in a few seconds, the grader runs the grading rubric, runs the text, and what we get is essentially comments and a score. And the coolest part, in my opinion, is this bottom thing, so the green and the red, where it actually highlights the positive and the areas of opportunities for the different grading rubric criteria. It absolutely has space for teacher comments and grades. So what the first grader does is read the text evaluated using the grading rubric and include comments and the points that a student would get for each category. And you would do that for the different criteria in the grading rubric. And the last thing would be to export it. And we send this to a second grader because all of our exams need to be graded by 2 different people. So we export and send it to the second evaluator, and the second evaluator will do a similar process. They will upload a specific file text that already contains the GPT grade and the first grader's assessment. This is hidden because we really want to keep it as fair as possible. Of course, as the second grader, you can see what the other teacher awarded and the comments they wrote, but we really try to evaluate without having the influence of the second grader. And the second grader will do the same thing, give points, write comments. And what is left to do is to export this as a file. This is a life-changing thing for us because we used to do this by hand, so grade by hand, but also input all the scores into an Excel by hand. But now we get this output. So this is an Excel file that includes the GPT comments and scores, the comments and grades for the first grader, the comments and grades for the second grader, and the total points plus the translation to a German grade. If you're not familiar with German grading, the highest score a student can get is a 1,0, and I think the lowest is 4,0. And for this score, there is no influence of the ChatGPT scoring.
Thank you, Mariana. So now that you know a little bit about why this tool was created, how it was created, how it works and what it gives us, I wanted to talk a little bit about the efficiency, and I wanted to tell you about the scores and the trends that we've seen between the human rater, the two human raters and the ChatGPT rater. So first, let's talk a little bit about efficiency. So I don't know how many of you are still giving or are in a teaching context, but are still giving handwritten tasks to your students, handwritten assessments. We have switched over to fully typed, which I think makes a huge difference for the students and for us. We're able to read them much faster. That being said, however, it still takes the first rater about 10 to 15 minutes to read an email and to assess an email, and about 15 to 25 minutes to assess a report. The second rater can do this a little bit faster, but it still takes time. When you add all of these things up together, for 70 students, 70 emails, and then 30 reports, you have many, many working hours, which of course, costs the university money at the end of the day. ChatGPT, on the other hand, this tool that you saw, does this in seconds. In fact, the other day I put in 12 reports and I timed it just so that I could tell you, and it took 52 seconds. For 12 reports, what would take a human around 2 hours. So that's one of the main benefits that we've seen. And I didn't put it on the slide, but there is another benefit that I see, which is adding up the scores. Human error, it plays a huge part in these things when we're doing things by hand. And because the Excel spreadsheet adds everything up for us, we don't skip points for our students. Okay, now to take a look at how the three raters performed. You can see on the left, we have the human rater 1, which was me. And in the middle, you see human rater 2, which is Mariana. And on the right, you see the ChatGPT rater. You can see we had a fairly small sample, only 28 participants, but I think the most interesting thing to look at here are the ranges. So if you look at the ranges for rater 1, it goes from 26 to 46, rater 2 is 28 to 46. So we have a range of 20 points and a range of 18 points for the two human raters. The ChatGPT rater, on the other hand, only goes from 30 to 41. That's a range of 11. Everything is very, very clustered in the middle grades. And I was just speaking to somebody yesterday about this topic, and he said that is a very common thing with auto graders. I haven't been able to attend the other events today because I'm at a British Council conference, so apologies if that's already come up, but it is something that we found here. We also had I would say much higher means than ChatGPT. But how do the scores correlate? On the next slide, you can see the correlation. This is for the total score. So you saw the different parts of the grade that we have, but this is for total scores. So in the blue box, you'll see the correlation between rater 1 and ChatGPT, which is 0.569 for those who can't see it. And then in the red box, you see rater 2 and ChatGPT, which is 0.554. They're not bad, but they're not great. On the other hand, the correlation between the two human raters' total scores are 0.808, and those are all significant to the 0.001 level. There's a nice little visualization for you there. Again, the yellow line on the scatter plot is the line of fit for the correlation between the two human raters. I also did an intercorrelation coefficient check, and you can see again here the two human raters have a very strong correlation. They go all the way up to 0.908. This was done for absolute agreement for those of you who are interested. And when I added in the third rater, it went down a little bit, but 0.856 is still a great figure, honestly, to come out of this. But there are limitations to this data, of course, just like any limitations. So the two human raters, aka Mariana and I, if we noticed after putting in our grades that we had given widely different scores, we would often confer and say, hey, I don't understand why you scored this person so high. Let's talk about it. And so we would both sort of give our arguments for the scores that we gave and eventually meet somewhere in the middle, or one person would lower or increase their score accordingly after being convinced. So the rater agreement might be slightly inflated here, and that's something that you have to take into consideration. And of course, as I already mentioned, the sample size was quite small, only 28 participants in this case, but we were still able to find some significant findings here. And then in terms of challenges, so this is something that Mariana has already mentioned, that the text that we import into the grader all have to be in text file form. This is not how the students write them. So that is something that we have to transfer manually. And when we do this manual transfer, we also have to remove the student's last name, as was already mentioned, to protect their privacy, basically. And the HWE Berlin, our institution, does not currently allow AI grading. I think this is common all across Germany. So we aren't currently allowed to use the GPT points to influence our grading. And we've noticed that the rubric that we're using currently makes ChatGPT a little bit overly sensitive to inaccurate grammar and poor spellings. And that's perhaps based on the rubric, or perhaps it's something else in the language model, which doesn't quite sit right with L2 learners. And then, of course, the question comes up, is ChatGPT unbiased and objective? I was hoping that when we started using this tool, that it would be able to look beyond students that I know and I have taught for the past semester. So of course I might be a little bit biased, but perhaps ChatGPT is just as biased, but in a different way. So that's something to think about. What are the implications? What have we learned from this project? Well, we definitely need to make some adjustments to the rubric. So there are things that fall under structure that perhaps other teachers don't understand the same way. I don't know if this can be improved. This can probably be improved with better rater training. But as it stands at the moment, our adjunct lecturers or freelance lecturers, they cannot be paid for this kind of work according to our institution rules. So it's very challenging. And whereas Mariana and I know that this email or the report that the students are writing is a draft, we haven't made that clear to ChatGPT. So it's possible that ChatGPT is looking for a perfect final email, which we know is not the case at the B2 or the C1 level. And then the question comes up, even if we are allowed to use AI as a grading partner, as a grading collaborator, if we can get the rater agreement up to 0.8 or even 0.9, if we're looking at the ICC again, should we? That's an open question. If you have any ideas about it, I'm welcome. We welcome your ideas. And then the next question, should the students be informed in this case? I think that's a clear yes. Perhaps students should be given a choice whether they're happy with the ChatGPT rater or not. Or maybe, maybe say, okay, do you want a combination? Do you want an average grade from all three? And then finally, you might have noticed that there is a small cost associated with every single text that runs through this program. That's because we pay for it, as Mariana says, or Mariana pays for it. And to keep everything away from the large language model. And so who should pay for it? That is a big question as well that we have. And I'm sure there are 1,000 other questions. I see there are some questions in the chat. So thank you so much for listening. We would love to hear your ideas. Don't know where Mariana's beautiful face has disappeared to. It was just there.
I don't know.
Thank you so much for listening, and please do keep in touch. We'd love to hear your ideas about what we've been doing. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, very much, because as you